Man, is it refreshing not having to fast forward through a bunch of commercials. Well, as you probably guessed by the video title, I am pointing in the right direction this time. I just got done watching the season premiere of Game of Thrones Season 4. 4 seasons, wow. Doesn't feel like it. Now, Game of Thrones needs no introduction at this point. I mean, maybe back in Season 1 it would have needed an introduction, but it has become such a phenomenon on TV that it's become basically a household name. I mean, if you want hardcore TV, there are certain shows you look to, like Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, maybe maybe House of Lies, House of Cards, the one with Kevin Spacey. Um, so I don't really think I need to introduce the show. It's basically or at least not in depth. It's a fantasy drama show with a lot of sex, a lot of violence, a lot of foul language, and I kind of resent the tagline that it had at first, or the unofficial tagline that it had, which was basically Lord of the Rings for adults. Lord of the Rings is at least in my opinion, an adult type of story. But I kind of got what they were saying in that there was a lot more risque content in Game of Thrones than there was in Lord of the Rings. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how Season 4 started off fairly well. I mean, it was unfocused and not really a whole lot happened. But for the most part, I liked the episode. It didn't really have any plot lines that I was completely disinterested in. It didn't have Bran in it, and I know I'm opening up my defenses for a whole slew of negative comments, but I don't like Bran. I've never liked Bran. Not because he's an unlikable character or anything, but because he is just so boring. He is so boring and bland. And I could not care less about his spiritual connection with animals or something if I tried. By the way, like J.K. Rowling, I think George R.R. Martin stole some terminology from Tolkien. I mean, I'm not saying that Tolkien originated the English language. I'm not saying that he originated a lot of these words, but for something that's become basically a pop culture phenomenon like the Lord of the Rings movies, it's a little hard to not pick up on things like wargs. Like, you're a warg, Bran. But basically, this episode was kind of like episode 10 of season 3, which was basically picking up the pieces of the Red Wedding, which again needs no introduction. It's where Robb Stark and all of his men got butchered, basically killing the last great hope that the Lannisters would be overthrown. The Lannisters have basically won the war. Really, their only real opposition at this point, at least that they know of, is Stannis Baratheon, who wasn't even in this episode. So yeah, it was an interesting place to start off the season, having us visit this world which has basically been demoralized by the fact that the Lannisters seem unbeatable by this point. The episode starts with Tywin Lannister, the Charles Dance character, melting down Robb Stark's sword, burning his wolf pelt scabbard, and using the metal from the sword to make 2 new swords to add to his own family collection, and one of which he gives to Jaime. At this point, it seems like they kind of revel in their cynicism and the narcissism of several of their characters. I mean, George R. R. Martin, basically become a punchline to him, with him killing off all the characters that we are supposed to like. Like Sean Bean was the main character of season one, axed him off at the end of season one. Then for a while it looked like we were supposed to empathize with Robb Stark. For 2 seasons, we followed him and his campaign, and it looked like he was really going to get somewhere. But then they axed him off. He lost allies because like his father, he was an honorable fool. I mean, he did the honorable thing and not the strategic thing, which was basically executing that guy so his forces were divided and he had to turn back to someone who he had already broken a deal with. So were you really that surprised when, I forget the guy's name, Filch from Harry Potter, were you really surprised when Lord Filch betrayed him? But this was basically picking up the pieces from where the Red Wedding left off, because we saw several characters like Sansa in a state of grieving. And I also liked the Jon Snow bit. Kit Harington recently coming off of Pompeii. Jon Snow, having learned of Robb Stark's death, we didn't really see him openly cry, but we saw him kind of reminisce on his boyhood days. So it was nice to have the characters not completely forget where they were at the beginning of season one, but also to have that little very human moment where Jon Snow is genuinely heartbroken over Robb's death, even though for a lot of years he was a rival to him. And in addition to that, the scene with Jon Snow basically cemented the fact that the North is an entirely new front of the war. I mean, the Wildlings are amassing a huge army, tens of thousands, to come and attack the Wall and kill the Night's Watch. And we've always known that the Wildlings were hostile, but it's news to the Council of the Night's Watch or whatever. It's news to them that the Wildling tribes have basically united. So that will present an interesting threat, and having Ygritte still having that vendetta against the man who broke her heart, Jon Snow. That'll be interesting. It will be interesting to see that kind of dynamic between these other tribes of wildlings, because really we've only ever seen one tribe, and that's Ygritte's tribe, the tribe led by Syrian Hines. So yeah, there was a real sense of heartbreak in the Jon Snow scene, but there was also a sense of escalation. That the threat is escalating. Now, we still haven't gotten any clear answer as to what those zombie things are in the North, but hey, I guess they're taking this one step at a time. Another series of scenes was they involved Daenerys, who is still across the sea. She has a whole army of Unsullied at her command, and basically they're kind of moving and they're approaching this, I think they said, a slave city. And they've kind of started to foreshadow that maybe she doesn't have as much control of the dragons as she thought, because they outright display open signs of hostility against her when she tries to calm them when they start fighting over a dead goat. So we've never really seen that before. Up until this point, they have been unquestionably loyal to her. So to see them kind of to see those predatory instincts kind of start to overshadow their loyalty to their mom should make it more interesting threat-wise, because up to this point, basically throughout all of season 3, Daenerys was never really in any serious danger. she had a whole army at her command. She had dragons. She had so many followers that basically she was plowing right through the opposition in season 3. So maybe this will present an interesting dynamic in terms of what she will go up against. And the very grim signs of the slave city, like Ser Jorah. I think it was Ser Jorah. He says they put a body of one of their slaves at every mile mark up until we reach their city. And I think they said something like there's 100 something miles between them and the city, so they're going to see 100 something of these bodies. So when we finally get to that city, that'll be interesting because I would like to see how many slaves they have to where they view them as expendable like this, expendable so much so that they use them as landmarks, but also what slave masters could be so cruel to their slaves as to just throw them away like this. So the performances were still very good all around. I can't really think of a bad performance. Although, to me, the two most interesting storylines this time around were the storylines with Jaime. Not really. He has returned to King's Landing, and his father wants him to go back to Caster-Waldau to rule as a Lannister. But Jaime sees a lack of honor in that because he has sworn to defend the king as one of the king's guards, or the Night's Watch, or whatever. So he sees abandoning that and going back to Caster-Waldau as a sign of desertion. And given all he's been through, he's not really in any mood to be ordered around. So after his father gives him his new sword, he immediately dons the uniform again and goes back to serve the king. So there's a rift between him and his father now, him and Tywin, because Tywin, like always, doesn't feel that he's living up to his full potential. And it's not just Tywin anymore, because Joffrey points out, you haven't exactly accomplished much, and what more can you accomplish now that you are 40 years old and have now become left-handed? So yeah, that presents some interesting conflict for Jaime. Oddly enough, I'm not really very invested in what Tyrion is doing in terms of his marital problems, because it's so obvious where things are going to end up. It is so obvious, and I haven't read the books. Things are going to go bad between him and Shae, because Shae feels constantly pushed aside due to Tyrion's duties as a Lannister, his constant need to keep up appearances, being forcibly married to Sansa. So that's going to drive a rift between them, and it is going to end badly. I don't know how, but it is going to end badly. And they think it is so. They seem to think that they are keeping it so ambiguous as to what is going to happen, and it is so obvious. I wish they would just get on with it. But like I said, the performances are not bad. Even the storylines I didn't particularly care for, or at least not as much as the others, the performances were still good. Like, I didn't really care for the arrival of the Dornish. Prince Oberyn, I think his name was. I didn't really care about him because basically all he did was come in and say, okay, this is who I am, this is what I am after, and that's all I got for this episode. See you next time. So there wasn't really much development with him aside from his primary motivation, which is to eliminate Lannisters due to a family vendetta. So we haven't really gotten much into his character yet, other than he's smug. But the other of two storylines that really interested me this time around was the one involving Arya and the Hound. Now Arya is a quote-unquote prisoner of the Hound, but even she points out that where would she go if she were to escape? her family is basically dead, and even the Hound says, "Well, you have a rich aunt somewhere, so I'll just go ransom you off to her because I can't really ransom you to your brother now." Um, so it provides an interesting. I think I read somewhere. I think I read somewhere like Arya Stark, safest person in Westeros, prisoner of the Hound. But oddly enough, we saw the Hound at one of his more vulnerable points because he does not want to go into a bar because he's like, that's too many men for me to kill on an empty stomach, and he has a stare down with some guy who stole Arya's sword and took her and her friends hostage back in season 2, I believe it was. So he has kind of a stare down and a bar brawl with that guy once the guy actually says, we serve the king, and the hound basically says, the hound basically repeats his line of dialogue from the end of season 2. That's, in case there's any kiddies watching. I don't know what a kid will be doing watching a Game of Thrones review, but better safe than sorry. But it shows that Arya does not really... She's not doing the stupid thing and trying to kill this guy, because honestly, even if she did, even on the very slim chance that she did succeed in killing him, again, where would that get her? She would be more vulnerable than ever. So it was nice to see them kind of work together in the bar brawl, because the Hound was basically very nearly overpowered. He was very nearly outmatched. He just barely killed all of them, or not even killed all of them. He just barely beat all of them. And Arya basically took care of the ones who were just beginning to get back up, and she got her sword back. And she now has her own horse, and she is willingly following the Hound because even she knows he is the best chance at survival that she currently has. So I look forward to seeing the dynamic between them develop. They had some interesting back and forth, which honestly was pretty funny. And I've always, ever since season 2, the beginning of season 2, I've liked Arya. I've been interested to see where she would go, because in season 1 she was just kind of cooped up in the capital. She didn't really get a chance to really progress all that much, aside from being trained in swordplay. But being out on the road, actually having experienced the world and some of the nasty things in the world, she's definitely become A, more world wary, and B, wiser. I mean, she's still a teenager. She's still pretty. She doesn't varnish her opinions, but she's not nearly as brash as she was in season 1. She's not nearly as immature. Although she does seem to take a particular enjoyment in death. And I'm not really sure if it was a good thing that I was satisfied that she stabbed that one guy in the throat. But hey, it's a dark show, and she's becoming an increasingly dark character. So that's about all I got for the premiere of Game of Thrones. It doesn't quite reach the standards previously set by the show, but this did largely serve as a reintroduction and an episode where they picked up the pieces, so I can't really expect it to be on par with, say, like the Red Wedding. At least in terms of emotional impact. So as far as premieres go, it was good. It was good. Nothing groundbreaking, but it was good. And as always, I look forward to the next episode.